Now we're good. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our special meeting. This is the Cuny County Master Planning Meeting. It's August 19th, 2021, and it's about 10:33 a.m. Attending our
Excuse me,
commissioners.
can we stop the meeting's going on, folks?
Sorry.
All right. I've called this meeting to order. Attending our commissioners Brooks and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? Nope, hearing none. Our one and only item is a discussion item for the Kootenai County Master Planning with Corey Trapp from Longwell Trapp and architects Ken Gallegos from Lombard Conrad. And you also have Ben and I guess that's
Yep, Ben Bernier.
Ben Bernier
Yep.
and then Sean Riley.
Yep.
All right. I will let you take it away, Ken.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for having us back. I want to give you just a brief overview of kind of what we were tasked with before and what we're presenting today. We were asked to kind of look at a number of the different kind of county facilities and master plan a kind of roadmap, if you will, of moves that could happen in the county to better utilize space for growth in the future for the county facilities. The table of contents here, we kind of broke it out into the 4 different campuses, and then there are a series of options at each of those campuses that this plan goes through. And what we did, if you we skip forward here just a slide, you can see down at the bottom there the overall information on each of these moves is the current square feet that a department has and the new square feet that they would have, and then on the other page there, kind of a estimated move time frame, an estimated move cost, and a construction difficulty. So that in the end, we kind of had a summary of, okay, well, these are each kind of like dominoes, if you will. Oh, I went the wrong direction, sorry. The point is for one department to relocate to increase square footage, and then another department would move into that vacated square footage. So that's why there's varying costs and timeframes and of difficulty of each move. Some are very simple, some are straight move-in costs. And these costs were not down to the remodeled the individual space to that level. They were just a kind of ballpark gross square foot remodel cost of that square footage to get an idea for the county budget-wise going forward to say, okay, if we did, this option 1, there's 5 moves, here's a budget amount that needs to be looked at for future budgeting purposes. The map here kind of shows the locations of county facilities and the buildings that each of those campuses have. So some of the moves have operations moving from one building to another. This is option 1, and I'll turn it over to Corey Trapp to kind of go through. I'm sorry, Ben.
Me.
Yep, you're right, Ben. Right on my paper.
No, that's okay.
All right.
And I guess I'll qualify all of this presentation first. Is this is not meant for you guys making a decision today on this department moves here. This is we understand that you guys have to take this and digest it and determine what's best for the county. And with that, like with the crowd, everybody's gonna have various opinions of what's good and what's bad as far as moves go. So questions if we can wait till the end, just because we only have an hour and a half and not wanting to waste you guys' time and anybody else's time, but we can answer all that at the end. there will be, we anticipate discussion between the departments on who's moving where and whether that's actually going to work. Anyway, first part we looked at was the main campus, and this was, last time we were up here about a month ago, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit, but we've kind of dove farther into the time and the cost and the difficulty of the moves. But I'll kind of run through everything briefly as far as what the moves go. Go to the next one, I guess. So first move, I guess, would be moving county clerk and assistant into the elections building. This would give them a lot more square footage, as you can see, bumping them from 1,300 to 4,600. Looking at the building, it's kind of move-in ready. I mean, we estimated about a 3-week time frame and 20 to 30,000, but it's a pretty easy move as far as construction difficulty. With that, the treasurer can move down into that space. That's going to allow them to expand by a couple of hundred square feet, but allow them a lot more, I guess, functionality in that space. We estimated this one about a 4-week move, 60 to 75,000 in construction costs, but a pretty easy as far as difficulty goes. This is going to let the auditor expand, take over some of that former treasurer area. Again, that's going to give them about 1,400 square feet, but it's a pretty easy move as far as time frame and cost and difficulty of construction. We kind of threw this slide in here of given where we're at now, you know, if you guys said go, let's make this happen on when construction would begin on the new building, which is kind of what drove this whole study is what is going to go in the new building and who moves where after that happens. So we threw this slide in there as kind of an estimated, this is about when construction could begin on the new building. Next one, community development moves from the admin building out to the Kootenai County North Campus. This would be it would greatly expand their space, but this would be a little bit costlier of a move just to get the infrastructure and set up for them. Not so much as far as construction difficulty, as the offices are kind of already there to go, but I think most of that was getting the IT infrastructure set up to turn it over into a county building. And if I'm wrong in any of that, Sean, correct me.
Yeah, so I think the one thing we add there is that community development is short. What we've heard, they're short 6 people. They have no place to put those 6 people physically in their department right now. And they've also got people over in the annex building. So the current square foot number represents what's available in the building, but not representative of what they really need.
Needs.
Yeah.
Next one would be driver's license would expand into the space vacated by the community development. This would need a little bit more as far as construction costs, setting up the right driver's license counters and the kiosks, and again, getting that infrastructure in there. But overall difficulty, again, wouldn't be too bad. The vehicle license could then take over driver's license. Again, it's mainly the cost is just getting the right kiosks set up and the infrastructure to convert that from driver's license into vehicle licensing. But it's only a one hammer in the difficulty scale, as it would be pretty ready to go. HR could then expand into some of the space from community development. Again, most of that's infrastructure, although there would be some walls needed and offices created in there. So it's a little bit more costly as far as expenses, and then ups the difficulty a little bit, but it's going to give them 1,400 more square feet. About the time frame is when the new courts building would be completed, give or take. But that's kind of what the estimate was as far as time frame and when the new building would be done, ready to move into. So with that, we can start moving AMP into the new building, kind of as already planned. For this, the new building costs are already captured in the previous studies and the programming estimates. So we kind of left these at all blank because it's not, we kind of looked at it, this is, if we put the cost in here, it'd be added on to that, and we didn't want to add on to the cost that's already been captured. This is gonna, one of the, kind of doing the study, one of the things that we came across was that the float clerks and the traffic court doesn't function very well in the Justice Building, and the float clerks are packed in there. So allowing them to move into the new building is going to help everybody out. Just give them more space to do their jobs right. And also moving the traffic court into that new building would alleviate a lot of the congestion on that main floor in the Justice Building.
And one thing to note on that, if you can go back on that, one of the things that was brought up in the study from the bailiffs was a evidence storage place within the building. If, just keep in mind down the road, if you did move traffic court up into the new building, that could, in theory, either expand for the clerks or now become your evidence storage for the courts.
In this option, civil and legal, the prosecutor and civil and legal stays in the courthouse. They take over the old AMP space. Again, it's offices, it's kind of ready to go, but it's just making sure the infrastructure is there for what they need. But it would be a pretty easy as far as construction difficulty. Civil legal moving out is going to allow IT to expand. And again, construction cost and time frames not too bad. It's just making sure that infrastructure is there for what IT needs. The offices and everything are kind of in place, but it's going to almost double their square footage. Moving on to option 2. Again, kind of starts with that community development, moving out to Kootenai County North. Kind of the same slide as before, about the same situation. We just felt like that would be a good place to start, especially like Corey mentioned, if they're short 6 people already, getting them fully up to speed, and as the county continues to grow, they're going to continue to grow.
Yeah. Hey, let's go back to the main slide again for a minute. So probably the main difference in this one, because it's not going to show up in the later slides, is that we've relocated the courts building to the west of the Justice Building. And we got to thinking about, well, why are we putting the courts building where it was at? And our thought was, by putting it in this location, is that we could connect the lobbies of the 2 buildings together, have 1 security checkpoint for the bailiffs instead of having 3. We'd only have 2 then. It reduces the amount of space and time and a number of personnel actually for security. It also allows that parking lot to stay. It could become a secure parking lot for the judges and people like that. Moving people in and out of the buildings now, we're still keeping EMP and not EMP, but
Court hold?
court hold is in the basement still. You move people up through the elevator still, but they can get into the Justice Building without having to go outside. And now the only place they have to take inmates outside would be from the Justice Building to the old courthouse building across the parking lot, which if we make that a secure parking lot, they're walking through a secure area and their exposure is pretty limited.
And it would also make construction a lot easier.
A lot easier, yes.
For
Yeah.
Right.
coordinated
Yeah,
construction projects.
It's going to be tough to try to build between the 2 and maintain safety
Operations,
and
yeah.
the day-to-day operations. That would be a real stretch.
And then connecting to the Justice Building also allows us to get that elevator in there that we need.
Right,
Yes,
and it's
exactly.
the elevator for the Justice Building, correct. Right. Okay, sorry.
No. I guess along with that, in this option, we also did show a new public defender building on the main campus. We know they've just moved into a leased building, but that lease will run out at some point. And kind of from the programming, and the courts wasn't real fond of having the public defender in the same building as the courts. So we showed them, and that can be determined later through programming, you know, and stuff of who moves in there. But we did show a new building. I think it's where the annex building is now. But we did show a new building on the campus for them. All right, as we talked about community development, moving to Kootenai County North. After that, auditor moves, takes over some of that's all of the community development space in there. It's gonna give them, 1,000 more square feet. HR can then expand. It's gonna give them, 400 or so more square feet, take over some of that community development spot. Again, kind of the construction cost and difficulties just expanding that. New walls are gonna have to be created, new offices are gonna be created, and along with the wiring and HVAC to go along with that. Kind of the same slide. This is the picture from the way the building's kind of diagrammed now. If we did move it, that would need to change, just the overall shape of the building, but that's what we had, so it's in there right now.
And you take out a floor, because we've got
Yep,
public defender in a different building.
right.
Yeah.
Treasurer can expand into some of the auditor space. That auditor space functions as offices and stuff now, so it would be a pretty easy, low-cost move. The recorder would take over the other part of the auditor space. Again, pretty low-cost move. Couple weeks, pretty easy construction difficulty. This one we have the GIS kind of expanding into the rest of the auditor space. Kind of looking at, they have 2 offices right now, and I think some people spread out into the annex building, kind of consolidating all that into one spot. Fairly easy move. The offices are there. Easy construction difficulty.
Would they be, my understanding, the way they operate is they are collaborative and they talk back and forth to each other a lot. So is that going to be sound and there's not like where you just can right now walk between the treasurer, the auditor, and the recorder and hear?
Yeah.
Well, my thought on that would be the one big office that payroll is in.
Yeah.
Jeff and Steve could work in that one.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what they do now. They're across from each other in real
Gotcha.
small office. So yeah, they would have the availability to do what they do now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But and that's part of the the ease of construction is just separating some of those spaces and adding a wall in here or there isn't too bad. I mean, that's fairly easy to do. The assessor is going to take over just those 2 offices on that floor. It gives them a little bit more room, but it kind of gives them that whole floor or that whole part of the floor. Instead of having 2 offices that another department essentially has to walk through their department to get to their office. And that one, cost-wise, it's really nothing to do. So this is where kind of the new courts building gets completed. Show the justice floor plan of the main floor of the justice on this plan, just to kind of anticipate where it would tie into the lobby and just kind of give you an idea how those are going to connect. This one we have civil legal and the prosecutor moving into the new courts building. Which is already programmed as part of one of the options on one of the floors. But it's going to kind of the same thing as before. It's going to allow IT to expand into that civil legal space. Showing the specialty courts, the float clerks, that traffic court area, all that again could now move into the old courthouse and not into the new courts building, mainly taking over the floor where the prosecutors are now.
Yeah, so in this one, traffic court actually moves into, we've got a note here, it moves into the new building,
Right.
not into the old courthouse.
Yep.
But the specialty courts is in like 3 different buildings right now, so it would, and the specialty courts and float clerks would not actually take up this entire floor. So it actually gives you some future expansion space and growth if you need it.
And it's just showing that public defender moving from their rented office currently into a new building. It's a new building, so this is up there on the construction difficulty and the cost, but that still has yet to be programmed. I mean, we have it programmed from the study from the new courts building, but no floor plan layouts or anything like that. We know what they need as far as size and square footage, but that can be determined whenever you say go.
Okay.
One other thing, before we move off of option 1 and 2. In one of the scenarios, it shows the clerk and county assistants moving to elections. And that move could happen anytime. If that were to happen anytime, you could then, for the short term, give that space to community development. And David could have space and bring even though it's on different floors, it would still work.
Well, they're in different buildings right now, so
Yeah.
different floors.
So
would be a step
different
up.
floors in the same building would be fine. If you decided, these are just options that we were talking about this morning before we came here. If you decided the clerk doesn't want to go, or it's not in the best interest of county assistants to not be there, whatever the case may be, short term, another solution to help David out would be to take HR and put HR out at elections, short term, and then David could take that over so that he could, that's something that you could do for his department that won't cost you any money, virtually no money, and he can start hiring the people he needs because he doesn't have any place to put them, is my understanding. So that's something that's out there right now floating that it's an option you could do that we just didn't put it in here. We kind of came up with it after the fact.
Well, and knowing that it would be a short-term solution
Yeah,
until they get to move.
Right, it's not a long-term, it's just a short-term, almost no-cost Band-Aid, if you will, to get you by.
With that, I guess I'll turn it over to Corey to go through the public safety campus.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. So now we're going to talk about a couple options at the public safety campus. This first option 1, we're looking at about 8 different moves that we think make some sense, and then we'll go over a second option after this. Of course, you got the sheriff's office, public safety building, Compton building, the jail, some vehicle maintenance, and the Pierce Clegg building on that campus that we're all kind of looking at, and a facilities building. So if we go to the first slide, our suggestion is that the first option would be to move the detectives where they're at now over to the Pierce Clegg building. It puts them next to evidence storage. They already have a few people in that building already, which is highlighted by the dashed line area up there. And it puts them also next to the corner. It also puts them out, if we do the evidence building, processing building out there, it puts them out next to that too. So that would be the first move. What that move then allows is for us to move records over into where the detectives were at, puts them next to their record storage space that they have. And they can move into that pretty much as is, so the cost there is pretty minimal. Time frame wouldn't take long. Then that frees up space within the sheriff's office to where you can move patrol and sergeants and some people up out of the basement. It gives them some more space for their staff. Would not take a lot of cost or money time to do that either. Right now, our understanding is, and the next move is work release is being done through the lobby of they really don't have a space. It's just the lobby they're doing that through. But we could take the old video space and probably some of that jury room that's there and create an actual intake and space for work release. where they could bring people in and out, do pat downs, searches, things like that, and not have to do them in the lobby in the public space. There again, that's not a real expensive remodel, wouldn't take a lot of time. So in this scenario, we're suggesting moving vehicle maintenance out to Cuny County North, where there's a big space out there that would work real well for that function. And then that frees up some additional space within this building and this site. So they would take, at Cuny County North, they would take the area highlighted in blue on the west end of the building. Potential issues with that, though, is that with moving that out there, now you've got security issues. We have to put fences and maybe add some fences. You limit who can use that space at Cuny County North in the yard area. And when we get to the Cuny County North, we have other options that we can explore for that. So then, with the next option, we move operations, which are
Maintenance.
and maintenance for the jail. We move that into the old vehicle maintenance space, gives them more room and more space to work from. And that allows us then to take IT and a gym space and actually move it into operations building. Gets them into a better building. The Compton building has some health issues with some things that are going on with it. It's just an old building that's past its prime. So the thought there is that we could then tear the Compton building down and create additional parking. Parking's at a premium at the sheriff's campus right now. And it gives them a lot more parking space for staff and vehicles. So then we took a step back and took a second look at well, what if we don't do some of these other things? And what if we do not move vehicle maintenance out and it stays on this site? So the thought here then is to actually do, if we go to the next slide, is to do a big addition onto the sheriff's office. This would be 2 stories, it'd be a basement with an upper level. And you move detectives, get them in the sheriff's office building. Records would still move over to, if we go to the next slide, records still moves over into where the detectives are now, puts them next to record storage. We take the IT and gym area and we move that into the basement of the addition onto the building. And then the last phase of that, the Compton building is demolished and you create additional parking. This option is going to be a lot more money than option 1 due to the fact we're building a whole bunch of new space. Option 1 actually takes advantage of a lot of existing space that already exists on the campus. So anyway, those are 2 ideas that we came up with.
And you could still, if you have a kind of a combination between 1 and 2. So if you move detectives over into the work release center, then you probably wouldn't have to have an addition because that's still going to make some space, but vehicle licensing would then stay where they are. So then you would have to kind of figure out, how you're going to work around what space opened up. But otherwise,
You mean vehicle maintenance stays where they're at.
yeah, vehicle maintenance
Vehicle
stays where they're at.
maintenance,
So, but it doesn't, like what Corey was saying, we'll show you in a minute. The thing you have to consider if vehicle maintenance goes out there, and I talked to the undersheriff just before the meeting, basically that whole back 8 acres or 7 acres, whatever the back of it is unless you go through some extravagant fencing and access, it's basically going to be a secured area because the sheriff's vehicle's being in there. So that's why that kind of becomes a problem with regards to getting to the fuel tanks and stuff for the general county employees if you did that way. So
we'll move on to Cuny County North Campus. So we've got four options here. The first option that we're looking at is to move airport maintenance and airport offices into the west half of that building, which would fit pretty well. There's a lot of space there for them to use. I think you have also the same thing that you have with the sheriff. You've got security issues and you also have financial issues that occur when you put FAA dollars into that building, which could potentially hamstring some of the things you might want to do there. Just to keep that in mind. In this scenario, community development still moves out into here. They don't need all the space. And then on the north side of that building, you could actually you're going to need an IT person out there, so a small office for them. The assessor could have some offices up there for some other people that are working on the north end of the county. GIS could be out into this area, and the surveyor could move out to that area too. So, and then in all of these, the big conference room on the north side of the building, we've left that white because the idea is that's a community or a conference room that everybody in the county can use and schedule it. So it's not really assigned to any one department. So that's why that's white. Okay. So then option two is we thought, well, if we don't move the vehicle maintenance out there, the idea would be to move the transit buses into that and you let them use the shop space. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide here. So transit moves into the area in blue. County maintenance gets some space out there. The white area is kind of overflow space that can be used to turbine in the future. You get a big warehouse space, which is the orange space. In this scenario, we are suggesting moving a satellite driver's license department out there to the main floor. And then the upper floor of the, which is the engineering department right now for Kootenai Electric, that upper floor would be 8 deputies and detectives. That green area could easily be separated and secured separately from the rest of the building and make that, security-wise, easy to separate off. The east half of the building is still the same with community development and IT, assessor, and GIS moving into some of that space too. Okay. So then option three, this is the one where we actually have county vehicle maintenance moving out into the building. Let's go to the next slide, Ken. So county vehicle maintenance would be the blue, and as I suggested, we'd have to really take a hard look at security of fencing the yard area. We could actually put a fence down the middle and maybe create two areas back there if we had to. The possibility here that you could move SARS storage into this building, and you could take the SARS site and you could sell it or lease it out to somebody else. You get the same storage in the orange area for county warehouse storage. Detective and driver's license moves out in this option still too. And community development and the other part of that is still the same in this option. So then in option four, we talked about the possibility of moving parks and waterways into the shop space and the two-story office area. So they would take, parks and waterways would take all the area in green. Then you could do the same thing with their site. You could lease it out or sell it off or do something with that. The SARS storage moves over and you could do the same thing with that building, again, either leasing it out to somebody else. Community development and IT, the assessor, all that is still the same in this option. So Ken, turn it over to you.
Yeah, this is kind of the last move here, which really could happen at any time because the 911 campus kind of stands alone as it is. Currently in the little building, the 911 moves to the north campus and add an addition onto the OEM building. And then the current 911 building remains as a backup facility. So centralizing operations there at the OEM. This is the kind of the last one that we have here, really kind of sums up the options. Really, again, these are kind of just kind of ballpark square foot costs for these moves, adding up the square footage. In today's dollars, you know, as the years go on and inflation goes on, you know, these numbers only go up. But it's a good point of reference to look at for future budgeting of the options and what moves the county wants to take a look at. There are a couple preferred options. If you had asked us what we think the best course would to do would be, Corey, you have those.
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time talking about these different options and kind of what we think is maybe the best for the county for the future. And, you know, really, if you look at the main campus, we think option 2, where we take the building and put it on the west end, works the best. It's going to be easier for construction. We can potentially see that being maybe a little more cost effective. You're not going to have as much safety issues and things like that to deal with.
Now, there's one thing to note, that number is big because there's a $15 to $20 million building in there, in those options. All the
Yeah.
other parts of that option are very small cost moves.
Right.
And some of them are, their costs, like Ben had said, are incorporated into that new courts building.
Right. So the other part of option 2 also is that it gives us more space in the old courthouse building for future growth. If we stay with option 1, once it's built, you're full.
Moving forward.
And you have no more room for growth or no flexibility in any
And I think
other
I think
spaces.
the same thing goes for the admin building. Some of that space is
Right.
not gonna be full right now. It's gonna allow for some future growth.
For some future
Like,
growth.
for instance,
Right.
in option 2, when AMP moves into the basement, and we didn't mention, but yeah, you could see the holding cell and how it was laid out in there and how that, but then that would leave that entire, with the prosecutor moving into the new building instead of having to go down there and specialty courts coming out, it would leave that whole bottom floor for growth and probably at least half of the second floor, because the specialty court's not gonna fill it right away. So those are your future judges' chambers right there.
Right. And also looking at this, you know, if you could also take the building and option the new courts building, you could actually move that as part and put that into option 1 and do all the rest of the steps that were in option 1 too. So there's ways to kind of combine some of these together also. When we look at the public safety campus, I think we think that probably option 1 makes the most sense there. There's room on site with the buildings that are there that you can accommodate the space needs and things by just shifting some people around without having to build a new big addition onto the sheriff's office. With that said, though, I think option 1 in that we were moving vehicle maintenance out to Cuny County North, we probably wouldn't do that. I think in the long run, we think vehicle maintenance probably should stay at the sheriff's campus. So we'd have to adjust things just slightly to make that accommodation. I think the main thing would be is where do we put IT? I think the trickle down to that is if we don't move vehicle maintenance, we have to do something for IT and that gym space to create more parking if the Compton building is torn down.
But you do have a
But it's a
gym,
much smaller addition or a much smaller building to do.
and you do have a ready-made gym at Kootenai North in the basement.
Yeah.
There's a gym there.
So then, when we look at the Kootenai North campus, just logistically, it just seems to us that moving the transit system into the building, that was option 2, that's the one that seemed to make the most sense to us too, for the logistics of using the space, especially since they don't even have a building or home right now, and with the lifts that are in that space, they're big lifts. They have the capability of lifting the buses up, so you can do maintenance on them. They're picking up those big Cuny electric trucks right now, so they have that capacity. And then priority-wise, looking at it, probably the 911 center is probably lowest on the list of building a new space. They do have some option with, if they have a breakdown, they get 2 desks out at Post Falls. The reality long-term is they probably do need a new 911 space so they can grow, because they can't grow really where they're at.
Right.
And make that existing 911 a backup space. So. With that,
So,
is there-
one last thing from me. When you guys started this, you asked LCA and Longbow Trap to come up with a plan that gave you a map of how to make your moves. How long is it gonna take? How much is it gonna cost? Okay, that plan is now here, and, we feel like it's a pretty solid plan. You can shuffle and juggle, but now if you wanna move and change things, you can see what the costs pretty much are gonna be. The thing that I don't want to say advice, but I have to say advice. What you need to consider, the worst case scenario could be that if you don't start saving money now, and in 3 years, when Kootenai North opens up and your building is just about done, you're not going to have any money to move anybody. So just like when Post Falls built City Hall, they started setting money aside, because you have to remember also, the new building does not have FF&E. That's $800,000. So you're going to need to, because otherwise, if you're not budgeting and setting it aside now, then in 3 years, all those costs that are sitting there are going to come up all at once. And, that's a lot of money. You're not going to have it. I mean, it's going to take time to save it up. So that's why I say, the worst case scenario would be if you didn't start saving money today, you can't do any of this even when your buildings are ready for you.
Right. I have a plan.
Good. I just wanted to bring it up. I would walk out the door and feel bad if I didn't at least bring it up.
No, I appreciate that.
So the other thing
Excuse
that's
me,
not.
I have a question. You keep talking about we think, who are you working for? Them, you're not working for the county.
No, I don't. I'm not working for the county.
Okay, I just want that.
We brought him on as a consultant.
I
Brought
understand
me on
that,
as a
but I
consultant on
think
it.
after you roll with the county for how many years, I think it's very important that be brought up and recognized.
Yeah.
And
Thank
we specifically brought Sean onto the team, knowing that he's no longer a county employee, but he brings a lot of knowledge and
He does.
and he provided a lot of information and insight to the rest of us that was very, very valuable.
And you couldn't have a better guy.
Thank you. And that's why when I say we think these options are the right ones, that's because we've just brainstormed all this
Okay.
stuff, and it's been a good combination of
Yeah.
knowledge and movement and stuff like that. So
One other thing too is what we didn't take into account in the study is maintenance cost and deferred. we know there's some mechanical issues in some of the older buildings that need to be addressed. So those things need to be bundled into some of these projects too. The other thing we didn't address directly was the JJC. And the reality of that building is, if you went to replace it, it's going to cost you way more money to build a new building than it is to do maintenance and upkeep on that building. There's valuable space there. So we didn't directly address it, but that was our thought process on that building too.
So there might be options. I guess what Corey's trying to say is there might be some options on the table. You would have to, one, have the funding, and two, you'd have to get legal involved in some other things, but there could be options to combine some of the mechanical work that's 30 years old and failing you as part of this.
We're actually working on it now as part of ARPA. Our $32 million that is coming for the American Rescue Plan Act.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole mechanical plan started. And
Do
so
you have an engineer?
yes. So yes and no. We know of engineers. We haven't gotten that far yet. We can talk.
Get a good engineer. And don't forget, whatever you do, you still have Siemens.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get a really good, I know we're getting off track here. Sorry, that's what I do. But you
We can
get
talk after too.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a really good mechanical engineer, but you have to integrate with Siemens.
Right.
And that's,
For the control system.
yes, that's the controls.
Yeah.
That's a hidden cost.
So I get, with that, we probably just want to open it up to you to have any questions you might want to have and clarifications. And we went through that fairly quick, but.
Sure.
And I'll always, Ken and I will always be available to answer any questions, and if Commissioner Filios needs a separate presentation, I'm more willing to come down and just meet with him one-on-one and go through the document with him too,
Sure.
so.
Well, hopefully he'll watch the YouTube and get up to speed fairly quickly. So, yeah, I don't know. Bill, do you want to start with?
Yeah,
questions?
if we were to do option one, right through front page of the back page, what would that cost? Minimum, maximum?
About 19 to 21.
On
Okay,
the last page.
so two would be 31.4 maximum.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Okay, that's what I
And that's
thought.
just at the main campus though.
Pardon?
That's just the main.
I
campus.
know,
Yep.
because
Right.
I agreed to about 20 million.
Yeah.
And I said, it's going to be 30 million before it's over, and I was wrong. Before it's over, it's going to be 30 million plus.
Well, and that option, remember, had the new building for the public defender. So that's what was driving some of that.
We're just spending money like we had it, which we don't. And is this all contingent upon ARPA?
None of it is.
None of it is.
None of it is.
So how is it going to be financed? That's my next question.
Sure. So I think we're getting ahead of things. The way I'm looking at it right now is we'll find out in September if the expansion of the justice is going to be covered by ARPA. So that'd be number one. If it is covered by ARPA, then we can start going down that path of expanding the justice building. That'll give us courtrooms. That'll give us prosecutor and some of the other things that were outlined here. Then we can decide what we have money for going forward on the different moves.
I think we're hanging drapes before we have financing. And I don't think we should do that.
In my mind, we haven't even gone, this is just an optional plan that we have lined out. So like I said, to me, justice is bleeding. We got to fix that first. And we're waiting to hear from ARPA. And if ARPA says yes, then that's step one, and that's the financing that will cover that part of it.
Well,
And
I'm
then we
not
can go.
comfortable using ARPA for this. I'm comfortable with a general obligation bond. And if the county believes in it, if the commissioners believe in it, then by God, go out and sell it to the people. Let them know what we're doing with their money.
right, questions from the audience? Dan?
Could we get a copy of the entire plan for us? Thank you.
And then we can have Repro produce these for other departments.
We'll provide an electronic copy so you guys can make, so you can
Perfect.
make extra.
Thank you. Okay. All right, this is just preliminary stuff. Like I said, we got to take, in my mind, we got to look at justice first. And then once we're settled on whether it's a general obligation bond moving forward, whether it's ARPA funds, then we can start making other decisions. And in my mind, I would love to hear from elected officials to say, I don't want to just say, I like this one. I'd like to say, here are the pros and cons of why we want this one over this one. And then that way it'll be a little bit easier, I think, for the board to make some of those decisions. Okay. Public comment?
It's nice to have a path.
Yeah.
14 years with the county, we've never had a path. So I commend you guys for at least getting that taken care of. We've stabbed at a couple master plans and left the sheriff out of them. And at least this time we were able to get the sheriff and their campus involved because they have the same problems that you have down here.
Yep.
They're no different than community development. We'd love to hire people. We can't get them in a closet.
Right.
So what you do with it and how you deal with it, that's totally up to you, of course. But it's nice that there are options on the table and some type of roadmap to move forward and at
Yes.
least see what you're looking at.
Yeah. Thank you. I love the presentation. Very easy to follow. And I like the take-home materials and appreciate it. Appreciate all the hard work you guys did kind of at the last minute, like, oh, by the way, can you do this for us too?
And you'll be sending it to us in electronic form also?
Yeah, I'll drop one
Please.
off.
Yeah.
Oh, that
With
would be
you.
wonderful,
Yep.
because, yeah, I need a copy of all of it.
Yep.
No, you don't.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
I guess before we wrap up, I guess kind of in the back of our head is where does that leave the original project and what do you want us doing as far as that?
Right.
Are we waiting until September and figure that out or?
Yes, at this point, which September is now only a couple weeks away.
It's weird, I
Yeah.
know.
So we have an ARPA task force for the money that has been designated for Kootenai County. And once they get the answers from the Treasury Department, then we'll have a better idea of where we're going to go and how we're going to go. And for me, I really like adding on to the Justice Center rather than building the building in between. I never liked that idea. So I think we're going to have a good path forward no matter what. Go in
That's
there.
kind of what we, I think, assumed, but we could see the other way too of go, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it'll be easier because you just have to block off the South Justice parking lot for staging and all that. And
You'd probably lose a little bit of the old gravel lot for staging and a construction trailer.
yeah,
But you got 200 spaces across the street. It's not like you haven't been down that road before.
right.
I think it's a better fit on the west side and there's kind of that elevation change which makes that even more desirable.
Right.
It doesn't change who's down on the bottom, but
But they're not in a basement as much anymore.
Right.
right, you could have some windows and something there. And then the other thing is like we talked about before, it gives you the elevator that eventually
That we
somebody's
need.
going to tell you you're going to have to get one.
Right. Yep.
So I think that would be a good thing to consider, just shifting it over there.
Sure. So September, we should get the answer and then we'll know our next step from there. I think that's about all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Sounds
You
good.
know.
Well, in the meantime, like I said, Corey said, let he or I know if you had other questions and we can get those answered.
Okay. And Nancy, anybody online have any questions? Nobody. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And it is 11:27. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Sean.